حي على الفلاح.
In the 14th century, traders from Arabia, Gujarat and China arrived in what is now Indonesia, seeking cloves, cinnamon and nutmeg. They brought with them Islam. And as some settled on Java and Sumatra, the new religion gradually blended with local culture. Jump forward 7 centuries, and Indonesia is now the world's most populous Muslim majority nation in the world. Islam spread like a beacon, carried from island to island. Each time the inhabitants of an island accepted Islam, they themselves became the standard bearers of the new faith and worked hard to give dawah to others. By the time the Portuguese and the Spanish arrived on the scene in the 16th century, 1512 onwards, the entire Indonesia and the surrounding islands were either under the sway of Islam or on its way to becoming Muslim. Islam came to the Levant, the north of Africa, Central Asia, and Southeast Europe on the back of conquest by Muslim armies. In most of these parts of the world, the original inhabitants first resisted Islam out of unfamiliarity with the new religion, but after the Islamic systems were implemented over them, and they realized that these replaced tyranny, injustice, and exploitation with fairness, justice, and opportunity, they developed a deep appreciation for Islam and converted. In Southeast Asia, however, the local people welcomed Islam from the very start. They did not resist the coming of the new religion, but rather invited Muslim preachers to explain the core concepts of Islam, and then converted on the basis of the intellectual strength of these concepts. Unfortunately, besides this, not much is commonly known regarding the origin of Islam in Southeast Asia. Who brought Islam to this part of the world? When? How quickly was it adopted by the local people? What drove them to adopt this new religion? Modern Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world, together with Malaysia and the Philippine Islands. This area is home to over 250 million Muslims. Historically, the region has been referred to the East Indies, but we will use the term archipelago to include the modern nations of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei, and the term Malay as a comprehensive term to include the people, language, and culture of these 3 nations. The pre-Islamic archipelago had a Hindu ruling class over a Buddhist Hindu animist matrix. The first infusion of Indian elements into the archipelago occurred during the reign of Ashoka, 269-232 BCE. Ashoka was the first to consolidate his power over much of the Indian subcontinent. His early reign was characterized by a relentless war to expand his dominions. However, after the Battle of Kalinga, circa 250 BCE, he was so moved by the destruction of the war that he embraced Buddhism. His capital of Pataliputra, modern Patna, became a principal Buddhist center. Ashoka's edicts of nonviolence, reflecting the teachings of Buddha, were carved into stone and were sent to Sri Lanka, Burma, Afghanistan, and the Indonesian islands. However, it was southern India that was the primary vehicle for the transmission of Hinduism to the archipelago. Geography as well as politics favored the south. The monsoons connected the sea lanes of Sri Lanka and the Tamil lands to the archipelago. Commerce stimulated cultural and religious interactions. Buddhism was the international faith in Asia, but Hinduism found favor in the courts of Sumatra, Cambodia, and Vietnam. No doubt, the commercial advantages of maintaining a common religious bond played an important role. Southern India and Sri Lanka exported cotton, ivory, elephants, brasswork, and iron to the archipelago and China. In turn, the archipelago exported camphor and spices. China exported silk, oil, and amber. The products of India and East Asia were exported from the western coast of India to the Roman Empire in the Mediterranean. Dialects of South Indian languages, as well as Sanskrit, were introduced into the archipelago and into Indochina. The discussion about the theory of the arrival of Islam in the archipelago has several opinions among some experts. The opinion revolves around three main issues, namely the origin of Islam developing in the archipelago, the carriers and preachers of Islam, and when Islam actually began to appear in the archipelago. There are a number of theories that talk about the origin of Islam that developed in the archipelago, namely the Gujarat theory, Persian theory, and Arabian theory. The Gujarat theory states that the process of Islam's arrival to Indonesia originated in the Indian subcontinent. Pijnaple associates the origin of Islam in the archipelago with Gujarat and Malabar. According to him, the first to bring Islam to Indonesia were the Shafi'i Arabs who migrated and settled in Indian territory. This theory was later developed by a Dutch Orientalist, Christian Snoek Hergony. He asserted that while Islam was firmly established in several port cities of the subcontinent, many of the Muslims became intermediary traders in Middle Eastern trade with the archipelago. It was they who came to the Nusantara Malay world as the first spreaders of Islam, then followed by Arabs, mostly descendants of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Snoek did not mention explicitly which region of southern India he viewed as the origin of Islam in the archipelago, but he did mention the 12th century as the most likely period from the beginning of the spread of Islam in the archipelago. The Arabian or the Mecca theory is a theory that emerged as a refutation of the Gujarat theory. Proponents of the Mecca theory were Hamka, Van Leeuwen, and T.W. Arnold. This theory states that Islam came directly from Arabia, brought by Arab merchants in the 1st century Hijri. The theory that Islam was brought directly from the Arabian Peninsula was also held by Crawford. He argued that the interaction of the archipelago and Muslims who came from the east coast of India was also an important factor in the spread of Islam in the archipelago. Meanwhile, Kaiser views that Islam in the archipelago originated in Egypt, based on the similarity of the Muslim population in the two regions of the Madhab Shafi'i. According to the Arabian theory or the Mecca theory, the efforts made by the Arab traders in introducing Islam to the territory of Indonesia had a great influence in coloring Indonesian Islam. These Arab traders were actively involved in the spread of Islam when they were dominant in Western Eastern trade since the early 7th and 8th centuries AD. This assumption is based on Chinese sources that mention that towards the 7th century, there was an Arab merchant becoming a leader in the Muslim Arab settlement on the west coast of Sumatra. Even some of these Arabs have performed marriages with indigenous peoples who later formed the core of a Muslim community whose members had embraced Islam. The Persian theory holds that Islam entered Indonesia in the 13th century and its carriers from Persia, Iran. Proponents of this Persian theory were Umar Amir Hussein, and P.A. Hussein Jayadiningrat. Each theory put forward certainly has a basis that supports its own theory. The basis of this theory is the similarity of Persian culture with the culture of the Islamic community in Indonesia, namely as follows. There are cultural similarities in Indonesia with Persia regarding the 10th anniversary of Muharram or Ashura to commemorate the martyrdom of Hussein bin Ali, grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. In West Sumatra, the commemoration is with a Tabwik ark ceremony. As for the island of Java, especially Cirebon, the commemoration is marked by the making of suro porridge. The origin of the entry of Islam in Indonesia is through several channels, including trade routes, Muslim traders from Arabia, Gujarat, Persia, who arrived in the archipelago, generally stayed for months in trading centers while waiting for a good monsoon to sail back to the country of origin. The opportunity was seized to enter into transaction with local merchants. Trade centers on the coast or ports are terminals and connecting places with inland areas. Ports are generally located at the mouth of the river. Hence, trade relations with the hinterlands are mostly carried out through rivers. At first, the merchants only spread Islam to the port communities. But because the trade transaction of the inland communities with coastal communities continued, over the time, the Islamic proselytizing could be conveyed to the inland community areas. Da'wah path. In accordance with the teachings of the Islamic religion, every Muslim is a da'i. The muballighs, teachers of the Islamic religion, have a special task of broadcasting the religion of Islam. Their existence in particular has accelerated the process of developing Islamic spheres of influence. Among others, through the strategy of establishing Islamic boarding schools. In Java, Islamic broadcasting is carried out mainly by saints known as Wali Songo. The proselytizing strategy they have implemented has succeeded in expanding the area of Islamic influence to Banjarmasin, Hitu, Ternate, Tidore, and Lombok. Marriage path. Intermarriage also played a part in conversions, as happened in Malabar and Sumatra. The immigrants did not force their own customs and culture on the local populations. Instead, they adopted the local culture while introducing the doctrine of Tawheed and the requirements of the Sharia. The Arabs were always a small minority among the Malays, but they enjoyed a privileged position in society. They spoke the language of the Quran and had a reputation for piety and steadfastness. They were sought after as ideal spouses. Even the Rajas and the Sultans considered it an honor to have an Arab marry within the family, and those with Arab blood were honored as Sayyids, descendants of the Prophet's family. In 1292, the famous Italian traveler Marco Polo visited the port city of Perlac on northern Sumatra, very close to Lamre, and found the city to also have a Muslim ruler. He recorded in his journal that the kingdom was so much frequented by Saracen, that is Muslims, merchants, that they have converted the natives to the law of Muhammad. Apparently, the Muslim traders that visited and settled in Perlac had at one stage brought over Islamic scholars with the express intent of inviting their business partners to Islam. These scholars also settled in the area, married local women, and slowly but gradually spread Islam amongst the people. On the 1st of Muharram, 225 Hijri, 840 Christian era, one of the descendants of these Muslim, a certain Maulana, Sayyid Abdul Aziz Shah, established the Sultanate of Perlac. This Sultan Abdul Aziz Shah had then invited scholars from Arabia, Iran, and Gujarat to move to his realm, to teach Islam to his people, and arrange the affairs of the state according to Islamic teachings. Together with the Sultan, these scholars set up Islamic education facilities, from which Islam was spread throughout northern Sumatra. In 1345, Ibn Battuta stayed in the Sultanate of Sumatra Pasai for about 2 weeks as a guest of Sultan al-Malik al-Zahir. According to his notes, Ibn Battuta was greatly impressed with and pleased by the piousness of Sultan al-Malik al-Zahir, his zeal in the performance of his Islamic duties, and his love for study and debate with the religious scholars that advised him. The scholars at the court of Sultan al-Malik al-Zahir included Sharif Amir Sayyid from Shiraz, Tajuddin from Isfahan, and also Abdullah bin Muhammad bin Abdul Qadir bin Abdul Aziz bin al-Mansur Abu Ja'far al-Abbas al-Muntasir bi Allah, a grandson of the last Abbasid Khalifa. Ibn Battuta reported that Sultan al-Malik al-Zahir organized Islamic education for both the young and the old, and that he had invited Islamic scholars from all over the Muslim world to come and live in his sultanate for this purpose. These scholars organized regular halaqas, circles, in the mosques, some dedicated to the basic knowledge of Islam for adults, others to dedicate to the basic knowledge of Islam for youths, and again, others dedicated to advanced learning in Islamic sciences and law. This way, the Sultanate of Sumatra Pasai became a center of Islamic learning. The Sultanate of Malacca, for example, across the Strait of Malacca from Sumatra Pasai and present-day Malaysia, relied heavily on scholars from Sumatra Pasai. The Quran, together with the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, life, provide Muslims with a guide to day-to-day life, from marriage and family life to lawful food and drink, from modesty in dress and excellence in social manners, to religious freedom and peaceful coexistence with the people of other faiths. In other words, Islam encompasses all aspects of our existence, presenting its adherents with a blueprint to a prosperous life, leading to success in the hereafter. When non-Muslims experience this essence of the religion, they are attracted to Islam, often leading to their willing acceptance of Islam. Indeed, Indonesia is a prime example of the peaceful manner in which Islam spread to that part of the world. The native population opened its hearts and minds to Islam and accepted it as their religion, and over time it became embedded in generations upon generations of Indonesian Muslims, eventually leading to its status as the country with the largest Muslim population in the world.